my plan tonight is twofold. I will take you on a journey, that being my personal journey of leadership, which is really what we were asked to do. And I'll share some of the lessons of leadership that have made this journey real for me. So really, in translation, that just means I'm going to tell you some pretty good stories, I hope. I suspect that I might be the only head of a case school, maybe in the history of the association, that is from a small town in Northern Ontario called Sault Ste. Marie. And I really love being from the Sault. As I said, it's a small town in Northern Ontario, and many great Canadians come from the Sault. For example, Roberta Bondar, female astronaut. For you hockey fans, Phil and Tony Esposito. And our current Lieutenant Governor, David Johnston, to name just a few. And David Johnston has a wonderful quote in the Ontario College of Teachers magazine. You might remember that picture of David Johnston in the Globe and Mail. But he was interviewed in the magazine Professionally Speaking. My sister and my brother are teachers, so I guess it's in our genes. Professionals have a very special responsibility in a nation that aspires to be smart and caring, to show unusual qualities of leadership. As professionals, you have a duty to the public good that somewhat constrains your activities, and it also places a great responsibility on you. And indeed, David refers to our roles as public figures because people do know you. They recognize that you're a teacher, and they do hold you to a higher standard. An administrator, even higher. And I believe that this is something that every year in September we have to remind our faculty and our teachers that the calling that we've chosen to follow is indeed one that is held in high esteem. So I'm one of 4 kids, the Jurvic family, good Croatian family. My mom raised all of us, all 4 kids, on her own from the time that I was 10 years old, when my dad died very suddenly of a heart attack. The death of a parent is jarring, but thanks to my mom's strength of character and her pure practicality, I learned one of my first lessons about responsibility and leadership. Simply put, my mom taught me to be unafraid. She reassured me, my sister, my 2 younger brothers, that we would be all right. We would work together and we would stay together. She comforted our hurt and our pain. She calmed our shock. She acknowledged that what we were going through was very tough. But most importantly, she told us not to be afraid. And I believed her. So I was never afraid. And over the years, when there have been times when I have felt fear, gut-wrenching fear, somehow I just figured out that I had the strength to deal with it. So that's lesson number 1, be unafraid. From the very beginning, I was one of those kids who truly loved school. You could have found me in the rec room of our basement downstairs, getting my dolls all organized because they could be my students, put them in chairs. I would make up lessons, distribute the lesson, the markers, the colored paper, but then of course I had to do the lesson. It was only me, and then I had to mark the work. So by the time I was 8 years old, I think I really understood the hours of labor that go into teaching. And this was a great training ground for administration. Just like any kid in school, however, I got older and I needed a place to land. And thankfully, I was into sports. And in a small community, that's a big thing. In fact, I can honestly say that athletics has been a huge factor in shaping me. When my grade 9 basketball coach took me under her wing, I knew that I was determined and destined at that time to be a teacher. More specifically, I would be a physical and health education teacher. And I still remember her to this day, keep in touch with her. Mary Balfour inspired me to teach and to study PE. She was my role model. And very soon, I had a plan and I went for it. And this leads me to my second leadership lesson. Have a plan and just go for it. No matter what stage in your career, have a plan and go for it. Well, a few other unusual things happened when I was in high school that today might be considered influential in getting into the finest of universities. But maybe, like many of you, we really didn't know what is the finest of universities. We weren't too sure. We just applied to university. But one of the things that did make an impact was something that I got involved in as a volunteer. And I was a volunteer in the Big Brothers Association of Sault Ste. Marie. And given that my younger brother was the first child to be partnered with a big brother back in the Sioux when they were first launching this organization in the late 60s, our whole family was actually involved. I had a natural affinity for the organization, and in the end, the president of the association asked me would I represent the Big Brothers Association in the Miss United Appeal pageant. I got a picture. I won. And it was very exciting. Very exciting for Sault Ste. Marie because Lloyd Robertson came. But I tell you the story, and I don't think I've shown that picture to anyone, but I can remember feeling this huge responsibility. My schedule was already packed. I was playing basketball. It was grade 13. I had a part-time job at the A&P store. It was trying to get into university. And I remember thinking, what does this job entail? And what does it really mean to be the chief spokesperson for the United Appeal, the United Way of Sault Ste. Marie? And this led to a big lesson for me in learning how to live with ambiguity. Because I had no idea, but I'd accepted this role, and it was a little scary. And I think it's particularly scary for teachers to live with ambiguity, because most teachers love routine, they love control, they want clearly articulated and predicted outcomes. So for teachers, and for many of us, ambiguity is often a big part of the game. So lesson 3 is learn to live with ambiguity. I try to make it my business to read the stories of female leaders. Carly Fiorina wrote a memoir from Hewlett-Packard, you might remember Carly, and her memoir is called Tough Choices. And I've always really enjoyed that book because I think it has some great gems, particularly for women leaders. And in one section, she describes the experience of leading a team who must adjust to a new way of doing things. They must just work with new rules. And the team is afraid. She writes, my colleagues were unaccustomed to change. It seemed too difficult, and they wanted to hang on to their familiar patterns. They were afraid of what change might bring, and we couldn't return to the old way of doing things even if we wanted to. I learned something very important that day. I learned that for many people, even deep dissatisfaction with the known present can be preferable to the fear of an unknown future. I learned that when people are afraid, they turn inward to protect themselves. And those things most people and important to them truly get protected. I knew as the leader that I would have to work hard to keep their energy focused on where we were going, because in their minds and in their conversations, they kept returning to what they were leaving behind. And I knew from my own experience that it would be easier to face our future when everyone understood that we had no way to go home again and we were moving forward together. So to that I say, never underestimate ambiguity. In pursuing higher education, I made the big decision to go to Southern Ontario and was thrilled to be accepted to the University of Western Ontario in the phys ed program. How do you like that? Don't think for a second I did that by myself. At Western, I soon realized that I was no longer a big fish in a small pond. Everything was exciting, but at the same time, it was intimidating. Determined to be on a varsity team, I really had no idea what it entailed. No one had ever recruited me, and I just thought it would be like trying out for a high school basketball team. Needless to say, I didn't make the Western basketball team. But fortunately, someone suggested, well, Karen, you're a big girl. You should try out for rowing. No more than that. So knowing absolutely nothing about the sport of rowing, off I went, but I was mostly fed by curiosity. And what a great decision it was. Rowing became my sport. It greatly influenced my entire university experience. Do you ever stop and think about how much curiosity has impacted your destiny? Pure curiosity. It is such a wonderful attribute. It keeps you wide-eyed and it keeps you eager. So that's lesson number 4. Stay curious. I could say more about curiosity, but I think nobody says it best than Steve Jobs. Stay hungry, stay foolish, stay curious. And I think we can just leave it at that and thank Steve Jobs. My years at Western led me to my very first teaching job in a small town in London, Ontario. Tillsonburg. And at that, in that small town, a tobacco farming community at the time, I got my first job in 1979 at Glendale High School. I was over the top. So was my mother, because I was going to go anywhere to teach. So she was happy, at least I was pretty close. The school placed a huge value on sport and athletics. And to this day, I often think that working in a small community is the best preparation that you can have for working in our independent schools. And I take a really keen interest in applicants when I see that they've had some of these small town experiences, because they understand how people come together and they support each other, and that they have high expectations for their children. And at this time, of course, I'd never heard of independent schools, let alone Branksome Hall. In total, I spent 8 years in Tillsonburg. It was interrupted by a leave of absence, which enriched my academic career with a master's degree in education. I had the good fortune to study at the University of British Columbia. The learning was rich. My fellow classmates were from around the world, and I got to live in one of the most beautiful cities in the world. Equipped with my new degree and huge learning experiences from the coast, I was ready. I felt competent, confident, and ready to try my hand at leadership. And soon I found myself as head of Girls Phys Ed, athletic director, head of guidance, all experiences that gave me a taste of leadership when I was in my late 20s and into my early 30s. But it was time to move on. And as I arrived back in London, Ontario, I can say truthfully, these leadership experiences exposed me to the truth that I didn't really know what I didn't know. And I learned that early in my career. But one thing I did know for sure is that I was truly enjoying the opportunity to be in a position to affect change. And with this opportunity came a significant responsibility. Now, as an audience, I have to believe that every one of you know that. You know the responsibility that you assume when you make the decision to come here, to learn. You learn specifically about independent school leadership, and you've put yourself out there to say, I am willing to serve my school. Also, you're here because you've been supported. You've been supported by your head of school, hopefully by your faculty, and they want you to take on this great challenge. And it is this support, I believe, that will determine your outcome and your success as an educator. Particularly in the case of school leadership, support comes primarily from the teachers and from the staff. They could have been the people sitting beside you for the last 5 years as colleagues, but as you move into leadership, you need their support. In fact, I believe that it's not only wise to remember this, but to thank those who work for you. In June, when we close school for the summer, I always end my remarks with the following statement. I thank them. I thank the audience for giving me permission to lead. Permission to lead this fantastic school that's only fantastic because every person in this room was part of it. So lesson 5 is that you've been given permission to lead. Don't forget to say thank you. My small town experience served me well, but as things would have it, I did meet my future husband and found myself in a position where it was time to try my hand at both marriage and education in the city of Toronto. We could drive there. So in 1988, I was fortunate to be hired by Jeanette Dope, head of Havergal College, where I filled in for a one-year maternity leave as a teacher in phys ed. I was so excited. And that 1 year turned into a permanent job, a job that introduced me to the world of independent schools, and it was so exciting. New husband, new city, new job, new house, and before long, new baby. With all of this on my plate, it might have been the time to sit back and simply enjoy the world in which I had landed. However, when the North York Board of Education advertised for vice principals, I cut the ad out of the paper. It sat on my desk for a few weeks, and finally I asked myself, Karen, what are you afraid of? Because you're not afraid. The application was sent, and as they say, the rest is history. After 4 years at Havergal, and with my 10-month-old son in tow, I picked up and I headed off to the North York Board of Education. Perhaps opportunity doesn't always knock at the most convenient time in one's life, but if your sights have been set and you have a strong foundation, you'll be okay. You'll simply be okay. You've often heard it said, if I knew back then what I know now, I wonder what decision I would have made. Fortunately, life doesn't work that way. You simply have to trust your instincts and go for it. The lesson from these wonderful years at Havergal College, well, without question, I learned that women can be successful in leadership and successful in family life. And I call this lesson number 6, the great value of family and work. Working for the North York Board of Education taught me many things, and I was fortunate enough to work for 3 schools, not only at Lawrence Heights Middle School, but also Victoria Park Secondary School, and eventually as the first female principal of A.Y. Jackson Secondary School. So we have 3 stops here. And if I had to pack one lesson from these 3 school experiences into one, it would be the leader as a learner. Let me tell you, when you pack up and leave Havergal College, where you've been teaching phys ed in your little tennis skirt and all this fun stuff, riding your bike, and you have a lot of experience because you did work in Tillsonburg, and you are from the Sioux, and then you land as the vice principal of Lawrence Heights Middle School, high needs, inner city, located in the middle of the 2nd largest subsidized housing development in our country. You know what? You don't know anything. I was so thrilled to have the job. I attended the first music night that they had just before school was beginning. I sat beside my fellow vice principal who had worked inner city schools his whole life, and I told him about myself and my dreams and everything that I was doing. And Bob Young, he looked at me and he said, Karen, you know, you're going to be all right. Just don't tell anybody what you just told me. And every experience in North York turned out to be one of learning. It was such a rich opportunity, a chance to expand my knowledge and everything from dealing with social workers, ethnocultural consultants, while at the same time working for a board that was renowned for its innovation in curriculum and professional learning. And I got my first principalship, and that was pretty exciting. In the late 1990s, Janet Wright, whom many of you know, and Jim Lundy were the actual 2 original partners in what was to become a very successful recruiting firm, Janet Wright and Associates. Well, Jim Lundy began talking to me about independent school leadership in my early years in North York. I was actually still a vice principal when Jim came knocking and started talking to me about opportunities. But we both knew I wasn't ready. But I do remember Janet Wright telling me long after I had my job at Branksome, she said, Jim Lundy never forgot you. You were in his heart and he was determined to find a school for you. So in 1997, Jim Lundy convinced me to throw my hat in the ring for the principalship at Branksome Hall. It was coming up a year down the road. And I did. And I was appointed in July 1998. It's a limousine. I thought we should have a fancy car. I moved on campus with my family. Michael Jr. was 6 years old. We bought a dog, registered Michael at Montcrest and later at Upper Canada College, and we began the next chapter of our lives. Head of school. Wow, that was really big. A job that combines lifestyle with work. It blurs the lines between professional and personal space. It demands that you and your family live the job. It offers the richness of education and business together that rarely exists for educators. Truly, if you're ready in every sense of the word, and if your family is ready, the head of school in any one of our CAIS schools is the best job in Canada. And you must never forget that. And this brings me to my last and final lesson of leadership. I picked it up from Sheryl Sandberg, who is often referred to as the $1.6 billion woman. As the COO of Facebook, Sandberg ranks as one of the few women who are billionaires. A quote from a recent New York Times article describes her as follows. Everyone agrees that she is wickedly smart, but she has been very lucky, as she has had powerful mentors along the way. Sandberg sees herself as a role model for women in business and technology. In speeches, she often urges women to aim high and keep your foot on the gas pedal. And when I read that article, I knew that this was a leadership lesson that I could buy into. Aim high and keep your foot on the gas pedal. Even when your ship is on course, your flags are flying high, you've got to keep your foot on the gas pedal. You have to ask yourself, what needs to be improved? How we looked at this program recently. What's the next thing that we're going to do to make it better, to make it more relevant? And remember, there's always someone out there ready to topple you from your post if you relax too much. It's been said that the CEO's job is to be dissatisfied. You enjoy your accomplishments, you recognize the great results that our schools offer to students throughout this country, but you always have a grain of dissatisfaction. It's what keeps your school on the leading edge, it's what keeps you sharp, and it's what keeps you moving forward. I have been principal for Branksome Hall for 14 years. It's difficult to pick the best of the stories, but I can say over the years, we've hit some pretty good, significant milestones. We are the only all-girls international baccalaureate world school offering 3 programs with every girl, all 885 girls, studying the program. We are a leader in professional learning, nationally and internationally. We rank highest among CAIS schools in 2 co-curricular programs, rowing and debating. And finally, this fall, we are opening a sister school on Jeju Island in South Korea, thus establishing Branksome Hall as Canada's only national school with an international campus. You need a big plane to get to Jeju Island. And here we are. The campus is nearing completion. It'll be a school of 1,200 students, boys up to grade 3 and then girls right through to grade 12. We're offering the International Baccalaureate at all 3 divisions once again, as we do in Canada. The girls will wear the same uniform. And every girl in grade 9 at Branksome Hall, Canada will pick a term, summer, winter, spring, or fall, and study at her sister school. We'll probably send 25 girls per term. Take us a few years to get that one off the ground, but that's pretty exciting. So how did we get here? From the time that I was first approached by the South Korean government in 2009 to be part of the Global Education Village, to today, as we ready ourselves for the opening of Branksome Hall Asia, we did a lot. We signed an MOU, we conducted a feasibility study, we issued an RFP internationally and hired an architect out of Malaysia. We negotiated a final contract with the South Korean government, we signed the MOA, attended groundbreaking ceremonies, opened an office in Seoul, recruited 60 staff and teachers, and somehow maintained our faith that this will all happen. It will get done. As I bring my comments to a close with this story of Branksome Hall Asia on Jeju Island, I see the combined lessons of leadership coming together, and I marvel at how they have impacted me. I hope that they serve you in the same way. And I'd like to close my remarks by thanking you for giving me permission to speak this evening, and more importantly, for congratulating each and every one of you on your accomplishments. And I really encourage you to share your accomplishments with each other during the 4 days you have together, because too often we think we sound like we're bragging. Get over it. People want to hear your stories, and they want to learn from your stories. And I know that each and every one of you brings special gifts to your job every day. And those special gifts have made you special and have given you the opportunity to be here today. So I want you and I encourage you to celebrate the wonderful gifts that you have brought to independent education to date. And I congratulate you on this wonderful journey of leadership and just wish you all the very, very best. So cheers for you. Thank you.